Welcome to the Workplace Makers podcast today. I'm super thrilled to have Anna Hill joining me from Jasmax. And Anna Hill is with me today to talk about global insights on the transition back to the office in a post-pandemic world. And is the principal of interiors and interior sector leader at Jasmax. She has experience in residential, recreational, commercial and hospitality projects. So really broad-ranging experience there and fantastic breadth as a designer. Prior to joining Jasmax, Anna led complex retail and high-end department store projects across Asia Pacific, America and Europe, and most recently did the Invercargill Central Inner City redevelopment and the Sylvia Park Galleria in Auckland. So she's really worked across a range of sectors and countries delivering small and large projects. So let's meet our guest and find out a little bit about you. Anna, how did you get interested in interior design? What was it that drew you to this profession?
Hi Nina, thanks for having me today. Well, it's quite funny thinking about that question, what drew me to interior design. I grew up renovating houses with my parents in Herne Bay, and they bought all of these sort of old villas, and as a child we kind of renovated and worked through them together. So I suppose that's where my passion for architecture and interiors kind of started. But at school, I was really good at art and graphic design, and I thought, I'm going to become an artist. And then I reconsidered that when I got to university and decided I didn't want to be stuck in a basement painting for the rest of my life. So I was going to become a graphic designer, and tanked that in my first year at university. So
didn't like it. You didn't enjoy it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Just slowly made my way towards spatial design, and did a couple of papers there, and really started to fall in love with architecture, and just found a natural place to rest in interiors, and that's kind of how I got into it.
Amazing. And so your role is really a key part of a project that delivers a client's requirements. Essentially, they say, we want a new space, we want the space to do this, and you have a really key role in bringing that to life. So what is the process for you? What's the at the highest level, what do you start with, and what do you do next, and how does it end up?
Yeah, so it does vary depending on the project and the client, but really it's sort of that first phase is understanding what the brief is, unpacking that, what are the design principles, the goals, what are we really trying to achieve from the design and the fit out, and then depending on the site, depending on the project and the client, it's always nice to understand the surroundings. What's the history of the site, what's the history of the place, and how can that connect with what we're doing in the fit out. And that for me is always a really nice place to start. It gives you some good design principles to sort of start understanding and developing further what that space can look like.
Yeah, that's brilliant. For me, that really connects with two key concepts. Whakapapa, so it's like what's come before and where are we in the context of where we are now, what is the context. Yes. And that's also such a powerful thing to do with a change process, is to say, this actually, to see how it makes sense as a strategic narrative with where an organization's been before and where they're going. Yes. So to be able to then pick up the threads of those stories and bring them to life is a really powerful visual symbol.
Absolutely, and it creates a unique design outcome and a sense of place as well for whoever the end user becomes. It provides that really people-centric response to the fit out.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, I think, a unique thing that a design process and that design skill can actually bring to a project. So rather than, for example, if people are looking for simple kind of one-stop solutions, they won't necessarily get a fit for the people in their space. So I know we're going to delve into a little bit more, all of the concepts and the practicalities a little bit more around that. So tell me, as a designer, do you find that there's a common myth about design? Are there any stereotypes that people have that we could bust right now?
I suppose as an interior designer, for me, the biggest myth or common misconception is that we pick cushions and soft furnishings and paint colours and
yes,
and all of that.
Colours, right? Yeah,
just that's all we do. It's totally not. We work really closely with architects and we design spaces. So from the very basics of what is the layout of where the walls go, where the partitions go, how do you use that space, how do you walk around that space, how do you feel in that space, and then work through developing that further and finish off with what are the materials, what are the furniture, what are the soft furnishings and things. So it's sort of an end-to-end experience. It's not just the soft finishings and colors and textures. It's really visualizing and understanding how people use the space.
And so how do you get to that point where you understand, it sounds like that's a really key aim in your work, is to be able to fit the design to the way people are going to use the space. Would you say that's I'm kind of conflating two questions here, so let's go with just the first one, the second one. Would you say that's the aim of your work? What would you say is the ultimate aim of the interior design kind of function?
Yeah, I mean, the space needs to function for the user that's going to be within it. So whether it's your residential home, or it's your commercial office, or it's your hotel or retail experience, it's always about the user and how your pathways through that space, how you go from A to B, and what that experience is in between. So yeah, understanding what the end user is trying to get out of that space before you start designing it is super important, and then that really influences the layout, what requirements there are, whether if we're looking at a commercial office, how many meeting rooms, how many desks you need, what sort of collaboration spaces you require, etc. So the first instance is, how do you occupy the space? What are the key outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then what are the parts that need to be put in place to achieve those outcomes.
And does that normally look like some discovery work with the client? So what's the how do you build that picture of, this is how we're intending that people will walk through the space, will use the space? What's the normal process there, I guess?
Yeah, so I suppose we normally start with a workshop process with our clients. So we flesh out what are the key design principles, what is, if we're talking about workplace, what's the company's identity and culture, what are the types of ways in which they work, and how can the employees benefit from the space? What are we trying to achieve to really create the best culture and the best working environment for them? So post those workshopping sessions, we get the key principles and the key objectives of the space, and then we'd work through some initial space planning arrangements, bubble diagrams, that kind of thing, to really visualize how that space can work. Sometimes we do this alongside discovery and finding a site for the client, and sometimes they've already found and bought on their own lease. So it can vary from project to project, but that first workshopping phase is super important for us.
And you recently attended the Financial Times Future Workplace Conference, if I've got the name right.
Yeah.
And so that sounds fascinating. Like, it was really tapping into this global thinking about the transition back to the office in this post-pandemic world, or while we're still kind of living with COVID world. Yeah. So what was the general thrust of the ideas there? Is there any doubt that the shift to a hybrid workplace has been accelerated by COVID, or not?
I mean, there's no doubt that the shift to hybrid has been accelerated from COVID. However, I think the hybrid workplace or idea has sort of been underway for quite some time. It's been a conversation we've been having with our clients for a while now. It's, I guess, the next evolution of activity-based working, AW. So the mobile worker has, or workplace has been tested quite rigorously over the last sort of decade. And now with COVID, we've seen that ability to really successfully work from home or work from the batch or work from the cafe and then also work in the office. So that hybrid model has been tested quite quickly and proven to work. So I think, yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that it has shifted us much quicker than we'd expected.
And it's fascinating where people are working from, isn't it? Like you mentioned, sometimes I was on a call with someone this morning who said he'd spent the last few weeks 150 kilometers away at his batch on the coast.
Yeah.
And now he's back in the city and he'll work from the city for a little while. And such a different picture of location and time as well. Like when people are working, that's changed a lot too.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's quite interesting that the workplace now has to compete with. Now that we've all proven we can work from wherever, the workplace to bring people back to the office has to be an attractive space. As I said, you're competing with the batch, the cafe, the house, everything, instead of just the workplace. So it's a really interesting time and space to navigate for a lot of employers. How do we bring our employees back to work when they've already proven they don't necessarily need to be there?
And that really is the question of the moment. So it's a great segue for us to dive into what were some of the global trends that you are hearing about. What are some of those trends?
Yeah, I suppose one of there's sort of 3 or 4 key global trends that kind of came out of the conference. Flexibility, connection to that physical collaboration space, culture and belonging, and health and wellness, and how we can use those sort of 4 key trends to really design our spaces and create places that people want to come and enjoy and work in. So that culture and belonging and that connection is something that we can't simulate at home in the virtual environment. It's something that I think, we all missed it. I missed hanging out with my peers, and you couldn't just grab someone and ask them a question, or you couldn't run through a project really quickly. So that collaboration space is super critical to the future of our work. And on that aspect, they spoke about social being a really crucial environment, that people gain energy from one another, and that energy prevents burnout. I think there's been a lot of conversations about how employees have had burnout over the last 24 months, and that is a natural deriver from not having that sense of collaboration and belonging. Alongside that health and wellness aspect, everyone is searching for a space that is rejuvenating and regenerating, and works with not only the people that occupy it, but also the environment. How can we design spaces that enable a better future for the next generation of workers, and also a nice space to work in, a clean air environment, a space that is healthy and with great lighting, and I think those were sort of the key takeouts for me. If we sort of stayed at home forever and worked at home forever, it'd be a pretty dull existence, wouldn't it? So
yeah, really.
How can that collaboration and that connection to the workplace and to the city provide this ability to create connection with each other and the gateway into the next stage of life.
And you mentioned this, the clean air. You mentioned an environment that's refreshing, that has the an enlivening, kind of refreshing experience. And then earlier about the connection to nature and what is where is the space situated, and what is the nature surrounding. And so it's fascinating because I'm hearing more about this concept of which you can talk to with more authority than I can, around biophilic design. So can you talk a little around what that means and what does it look like to see that in a space?
Yeah, so it'll probably be quite a good point to talk about one of the projects that Jasmax has actually just completed. I myself didn't work on it, but was so impressed when I joined the team to see how that has really been put into reality. We just completed a project for MC, the new MC Centre in Auckland, and one of the key defining design principles there is this unique indoor terrarium, which enables the employees and clients to have this sensory experience of walking through the Waitakere Ranges. And that, I suppose, that's biophilic design on a massive scale, right? You've got this indoor environment, and it's completely full of plants. The lighting's key in there to make sure the plants grow and are healthy, but also, provide you an environment where you can actually work. Alongside the plants, create this clean, fresh air, right? They reticulate the air for you. So it helps the building systems management and actually reduces the amount of mechanical systems and ventilation that's required because the plants are working for you. So the final aspect, I suppose, with that space is it's a beautiful place to live. Work.
Feels like you want to be there for your whole life,
exactly.
Right? It feels like you would like to live there. Yeah,
exactly. Who doesn't want to work in the middle of a forest? Like, how cool is that? What an amazing space to be able to enjoy every single day. It comes back to that question: the batch, the home, the park, the cafe. Like their fit out has that. It competes with that. It is that. So it really brings back that retention of staff and that engagement with your employees, and a really cool place to work.
Yeah. I think, and when we talk, you imagine it. I imagine walking through that space, and I just think of, how instantly it takes you to being relaxed and calm. Yes. And and you can breathe in that beautiful air, and suddenly the little nitty gritty things that you might have been concerned about just drop away.
Yeah.
Much less important than admiring this gorgeous space that you're in.
Stuck on the motorway in Auckland, or coming on the bus, and there was traffic and it was awful, or it was raining, and you're riding your bike in, and then you arrive to work and you have this serene experience getting you through into your workplace. So absolutely, I agree. It's a super unique product and a really great space to work within.
So imagine, how about if we played it out and just did a little kind of maybe fun thought experiment around what would it be like to do the opposite of that right now? So could we describe what would be the worst way to set your space up at this point in time? Just for like the point of, I guess, making clear what it really means to have this flexibility, to have the connection potential, to be thinking about spaces that enhance wellness. What would you? Yeah.
I suppose what would be the worst thing to do is do what we were doing sort of 10, 15 years ago, right? Stack and pack and rack the desks in one after the other. No social spaces, no biophilic elements, no terrible lighting, lots of siloed offices, and really segregated spaces from each other, spaces that don't promote collaboration or engagement with other staff and employees. I think that would be the worst thing to do, is sort of do what we were doing before. I think, workplaces come a really long way in the last sort of 15 years. And it's exciting. It's cool. You want to go to work. You want to enjoy time in the workplace. You're not just watching the clock 9 to 5 anymore. You know, you're excited to get up and go and enjoy these amazing spaces that we're designing. And yeah, I suppose that if I was to turn it on its head, it's do exactly what we were doing 15 years ago. Don't do that.
Don't do that, exactly.
Yeah.
I can well imagine it. And I think of offices I've been in very recently, and I'm like, that actually does describe them right now.
Yeah. No, there's still offices like that around, but I mean, from my perspective, they're going to be few and far between soon. To retain talent and retain key staff, you need to provide a space that is a good environment and a great environment to work. And if you'd like to attract the younger generation, I mean, you have to change. You have to move with the times. That siloed office and really stacked and racked workplace is just no longer attractive to anyone.
No, exactly. And I think that's the key point there, is that, you know, people who've been in university recently, like say within the last 3-4 years, that's essentially a mobile working environment. You know, you're moving around with your laptop, you're able to work anywhere. You pitch up at the cafe or the library or from home, and you connect in online. And so people are used to having complete freedom and flexibility to be able to sit.
Absolutely. I mean, we do quite a bit of work with Auckland University, and the spaces that you're just talking about, we've been doing for them for years now. And these the ability to connect with technology is really important within those spaces, but it's proper teaching spaces where you have that and this sort of virtual and physical teaching environment. And then you also have the breakout spaces where the students can go and collaborate together and work together, and they sit on bean bags, or they lounge around on the couch and have their laptops there and they work there. And then when they need to do more focus work, they might go to a specific workstation, or they might work from home. Or learn from home. So yeah, I think absolutely the next generation of workers are already working in this way. So the office needs to provide them that facility, or they just won't get those great talent.
Yeah, that talent won't be interested. And
Absolutely.
You mentioned technology, and I wanted to touch on that because I think it's so significant now with hybrid working, that technology is really a key enabler. So are you finding, you know, in recent projects that clients are aware of that, and they're now, you know, really talking about technology enabled meeting rooms and technology enabled work points?
Absolutely. I think at the FT conference as well, that was a key point that was discussed. There was a couple of big industry sort of workplaces that presented to us some of their results for technology and how they're utilising that within their workspaces. Also, that they sort of setting up meeting rooms that have the ability to be in person and also online. And how do you create that space? How is that interactive for both the in-person and online? It's quite a challenge. It's hard. And how can technology help advance that? I don't know if the answer's there yet. I don't know if it's working perfectly for anyone, but I think it's getting better. So the dual screens, the individual sort of faces that can come up on the screens, and then that sort of key audio technology is super important. You have to be able to understand what someone's saying at the back of the room, and also someone saying on screen. How do you make the audio and visual technology work together?
Yeah.
Alongside that, they were sort of talking a little bit about AR technologies and how they're utilising that within in sort of workshop environments, and maybe somebody's working from home who knows how to use a machine or a piece of machinery, and they're sort of using this AR technology to have them put on goggles and almost show them how to do things with their hands through the goggles, as opposed to being there in person, which was quite interesting. And that's how they combated teaching people who maybe had to isolate at home during COVID, and they were the only people who knew how to use a machine. on the shop floor. So they were sort of using that technology to enable other people to learn how to use it. So
incredible how it's accelerated augmented reality and other technologies, isn't it? It's just amazing how people who have previously not really needed to get in and even work out how to use Teams have then had to have a reason to do that. And so that they've been it's a baptism of fire where they've then jumped in.
Absolutely, yeah.
How to use it, not comfortably, but because they had to. Yeah, fascinating. And so what we talked a little bit when we were just talking about today about the end-to-end experience of work, that people are potentially kind of starting work earlier, finishing later, switching on at home, switching off at home, potentially after spending some time in the office. So what do you think people are after as we create better experiences of work for them? Was there any discussion about that at the conference, or what we should be aiming for?
Yeah, I suppose that sort of comes back to that sense of culture and belonging. So that's the thing that was missing from the virtual environment. And while we worked from home and it worked well, we missed that team, that togetherness that the work environment provided. Another thing that was quite important, I suppose, that came out of the conference and was something that you sort of think is a given, but it's not always a given within the workplace, is transparency. So that employer and employee transparency, fostering this connection between one another and showing and sharing how the business is doing, whether it's good or bad, that visual connection to the company and the performance of the company, so everybody has that buy-in. That transparency is not a given. Sharing the how the company is performing is not always shared with all the staff. And I think that was quite an interesting point for me, enabling everybody to sort of visualize and see what the outcome is of their hard work is really important. And not a lot of companies do this, and we should. Why should we not? Why should you not engage with your staff and show them what their hard work is doing, or potentially where there's some gaps where we need to improve and work together to really facilitate making a successful company.
Yeah, because that transparency piece is represented in the space design, isn't it? So
absolutely, yeah.
Think about walls that stop people from seeing what's happening versus open space design, and you've got good line of sight across all of the areas. That's where you can see what's happening. You can see if someone's visiting. You can you kind of get a good sense of what's happening around the place.
Absolutely, and that clear environment and that transparency enables positive culture. It enables people to engage with one another, and the employer and the employee to engage with each other, which is important. That's how you grow a business. That's how you create a great place to work. So that trust and transparency piece is critical.
It's amazing how often, like, you read about organizations wanting to develop trust, and transparency is often where they start, is they realize that that it's a huge symbol, it's a hugely significant thing to do, to say that we're actually going to open the books, in whatever that means, whether it's fully down to the finances or whether it's actually a little bit more high level than that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, generally the high level approach is probably better and easier. There's a lot of nuts and bolts with finances that a lot of us don't understand, and really,
that's right.
You don't need to. That's not your job. Me personally, I'm not an accountant or a tax or a tax lawyer or anything. So it's sort of not. It's important to understand how the business is tracking and what we need to achieve and where we need to achieve to get to that. But The nuts and bolts, maybe not so much.
Yes, yeah, I'd rather probably not be too involved in it either. But I know that often transparency for some people it's critical. It's such a strong signal and symbol for them of whether the organization trusts them. So yeah, what if an employer or leader wanted at this point in time, because a lot of leaders are now thinking, not only how do we bring people back to the office, but what do we do with the space? And how do we make it that attractive workplace offering that is going to mean that our people want to be there? And so what is the process from start to finish? How long does it take to bring that new workplace to life?
Yeah, timing's kind of an interesting one because each project sort of differs in size and scale. So, I mean, from an end-to-end experience, including construction, it could be, depending on the size, it could be design and we could have it completed in 6 months, or it could be 12 months, or it could be 2 years. It's quite varied depending on the project size. But in terms of our process and sort of how we get to the end, I sort of look at it as a 3-phase process. We start with that workshop briefing concept and analysis phase where we understand what the key design principles are. We do space planning. We sort of work through that together with the client, and it's a very collaborative process. And that phase is generally sort of anywhere between 2, 4, 6 weeks, depending on the size of the project. And then that, after we've sort of resolved that, we move into the next phase where we work through the design development. So what does the space look like in 3D? How does it feel? What are some key design elements within that space? What materials are we using? What furniture are we selecting? Like all of that sort of stuff.
Yes.
We start to layer a little bit more, and that process can take, depending on the size, 4, 6, 12 weeks. And once that's all completed and wrapped up, we move to the 3rd phase, which is delivery. So documentation for building consent if it's required, and engaging with the services consultants that need to go into the space, your fire, electrical, etc. And that process for us is sort of 6-ish weeks, and then you're moving into consenting and site, and lots of variables, but
yes.
It could, for an end-to-end process for a reasonable sized project, you'd sort of be looking between 6 to 12 months. Larger projects get a bit more, but that's probably a good place to start with timing.
I think it's fantastic overview, because because there's people are needing to plan and obviously wanting some certainty. And so there can sometimes, I don't know if you find this, but there's tendency to shortcut the design process. And so what, in your view, is the difference between shortcutting and saying, well, we'll do it like the organization we saw, for want of a better phrase, without being cynical, but down the road? Because often it is, one that the CEO has walked through and they said, well, I'd like our workplace to be like that. I'd like our space design to be like that. So what's the what would you say is the result for a company if they do that?
It's not specific. So you end up with a workplace that's not for you, right? It's not for your people. It's not about your brand. It's not about your culture. It's about the workplace down the road, right? You've got a space that's designed for somebody else, and it may look nice, it may be pretty, it may functionally work, but it's not your brand. It's not for your people. And I think if you're shortcutting the design process, you're really robbing the best design outcome for your people in your place from yourself. It doesn't have to be hard. It's not a hard process. It should be fun and exciting, designing your space, listening to what your people want, thinking about your brand, where you want to go, what you want to be, who you want to be in the market, and what people think of you, and when they come to your space, that's fun and exciting. Why would you not want to do that, and personalize something? And you're prouder of that when you bring people around to show them it's not just look at this pretty workspace that we copied from the person down the road. It's look at this beautiful, here's our story, here's our place, here's our people, and you get a better design outcome than just copying the guy down the road.
Yes, I imagine it a little bit like the difference between saying, well, just moving into a house, for example, where someone's left their clothes.
Yeah.
And would you just put on all of their clothes? You wouldn't, because of all of these different reasons why it's not personalized to you, and they're just probably not going to work. And he might be a man and I need a woman's clothes, or
Yes.
or it could be like that. So it's just this level of personalization means that you can have so much more ease and enjoyment in your space, which carries over to incredible people outcomes.
Absolutely. And that's quite a nice way to think of it. Like you don't want to put on someone else's shoes, you don't want to wear their clothes, you want to have your own identity and your own style and your own space. So that's quite a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. I can take that analogy a lot further. I've thought about this. Yeah, it works. It works on a few levels. Love it. So then how do you feel about the future of the workplace? Are you excited about it? Do you think this is a great time? Is it too disruptive? Yeah, what's your take?
I mean, for me, I love coming to work. And I love designing workspaces. For me, it's exciting. The future of workplace, we're going through a lot of transformational change, and have done really rapidly over the last 24 months. And it's made a lot of people, I suppose, rethink what the workplace is for them and how they'd like to work in the future. And so being able to design and create those spaces for people to enjoy and bring them back and get them excited about coming to work, that's cool. It's a fun job. I enjoy it. I love it. I wouldn't want to do anything else. Designing spaces for people and places to enjoy and people to be proud of. Who wouldn't want to do that? It's cool.
It's an incredible time to be doing what you're doing, and it almost feels like a pivotal time when employers will make key decisions that could shape the productivity and the future of their organization for years to come. So
absolutely.
Fantastic. And lastly, tell us, do you have a favorite food to eat or cook?
I love lots of different types of food. I spent 4 years living in Italy, so I'd have to say my favorite food is Italian food. Simple, fresh, and just really easy and quick to make. I don't like spending a lot of time in the kitchen. I like to make my food pretty quickly. So something that's fast, a beautiful caprese salad, or a nice eggplant parmigiana would probably be something I'd cook.
Amazing.
Or
You're a lot better at it than most of us after having lived in Italy and worked it out. And and then I think, well, if you love that kind of food, maybe it explains why you lived there so long.
No, I love the culture and the place and the people and the food and everything about it, but I like to think it's my second home, but haven't been obviously there for a while, but looking forward to heading back this year. So
of course, fantastic. We'll get to plan a trip. Yeah, I relate to you on that. With a name like Nina, I was often asked, especially as a kid, because Nina is an Italian shortening. It's like a little nickname if your name ends in Ina, like your Angelina or your, Tonina or something. You'll be Nina so often I was asked, with brown hair, are you, but blue eyes, so it doesn't quite make sense. Are you Italian? Yeah.
Nice. It's a nice question to be asked.
It's a lovely question to be asked. Yeah. I just learned how to say in Italian, I'm sorry, I don't speak Italian.
That's kind of all you need, really, to get going.
Yeah, not much more. Oh, thank you, Anna, so much for joining us and for sharing the incredible insights into how we can make workplaces that people really want to be in this incredible time. So yeah, it's been getting to explore that with you.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome to have a chat, and yeah, looking forward to hopefully designing some future cool workspaces for people together.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Love to.